My God, Shanice, what happened to you? Samuel Caldwell, a white tech billionaire, stumbles into his Manhattan penthouse, heart racing to see his wife after a grueling business trip. The chandelier's crystals gleam, but a suffocating silence grips the air, pierced only by faint water dripping. Calling for Shanice, he hears soft sobs from the bedroom. He rushes in, frozen. Shanice, radiant with long, sleek hair, cowers on the floor, her emerald maternity dress soaked and torn at the shoulder, faint bruises shadowing her arm. Am I enough for you? She weeps, clutching her pregnant belly. Samuel kneels, heart twisting. A wet silk scarf, scented with jasmine, lies crumpled nearby, whispering secrets. What darkness festers in this perfect home? Who dared hurt her? Stay tuned. The truth will leave you speechless. Subscribe and vote 1 if this grips you, 0 if it doesn't. Samuel Caldwell's voice cracked with panic. My God, Shanice, what happened to you? The words spilled out as he stumbled through the heavy glass doors of his Manhattan penthouse, the weight of his briefcase forgotten as it thudded against the marble floor. The air was thick, not with the usual hum of city life filtering through the towering windows, but with a stillness that clawed at his chest. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across the expansive living room, their glow reflecting off sleek surfaces, polished stone, mirrored walls, a grand piano untouched in the corner. Beyond the glass, New York's skyline pulsed with restless energy, but inside, the penthouse felt like a tomb, holding its breath. A faint drip, drip, drip echoed from somewhere deep within, each drop a pulse in the oppressive quiet. He called her name again. Shanice! His voice bounced off the high ceilings unanswered. His loafers clicked urgently across the marble as he moved toward the hallway. Heart hammering. The scent of jasmine and sea salt hit him first, sharp and out of place. There on the plush white rug lay a delicate silver necklace, its chain tangled and damp, glinting under the soft recessed lights. It was Shanice's, a gift he'd given her on their first anniversary, now marred by streaks of water. Samuel's fingers trembled as he picked it up, the metal cold against his skin, as if it carried a warning. The bedroom door loomed ahead, half ajar, spilling a sliver of golden light from the bedside lamp. He pushed it open, and the sight stole his breath. Shanice, his radiant wife, sat crumpled on the floor beside their sprawling king-size bed, its silk sheets tangled like a storm had passed through. Her long, straight hair, usually a glossy cascade, clung wetly to her cheeks, strands plastered across her tear-streaked face. Her emerald maternity dress, once elegant, was soaked through, clinging to her pregnant belly, the fabric torn jaggedly at the shoulder. Faint bruises bloomed on her arm, purple shadows against her dark skin, each one a silent accusation. Her hands clutched her belly, fingers trembling, as if shielding their unborn child from an unseen threat. Am I enough for you? She whispered, her voice barely audible, choked with sobs. Or am I just a mistake in this world of yours? Her eyes, red and glistening, flicked up to meet his, then darted away, heavy with shame and fear. Samuel dropped to his knees, the rug soft but unable to cushion the ache in his chest. Shanice, no, he said, reaching for her hand. Her fingers were icy, stiff, pulling back slightly before letting him hold them. You're everything. Tell me what happened. His voice was gentle but urgent, a plea wrapped in dread. I slipped near the pool, she murmured, eyes fixed on the floor. It's nothing, really. But the lie hung heavy, her words brittle as glass, the tremble in her shoulders, the way she curled inward. It screamed of something darker, something deliberate. From the open balcony door, a breeze carried faint voices from the staff below, their words drifting like smoke. She was out there earlier, screaming. A woman's voice, Elena, the housekeeper, muttered, low and cautious. Something happened by the pool. She doesn't swim. Another voice, sharper, replied, Hush, Elena. Don't stir trouble. Samuel's jaw tightened, the words sinking into him like shards. He helped Shanice to her feet, guiding her to the bed. Her steps were small, hesitant, as if the floor might betray her again. As she sank into the pillows, her wet dress left dark stains on the silk, a stark contrast to the pristine room. Samuel's eyes caught a glint near the bed, a ruby earring, small but unmistakable, lying like a drop of blood on the cream carpet. His stomach lurched. It belonged to Chloe, his younger sister, whose sharp tongue and sharper smiles had always carried an edge around Shanice. "Rest," he said softly, tucking a blanket around her. "I'm here now." But his mind was racing, piecing together fragments. The necklace, the earring, Elena's words. Something was rotting in the heart of their perfect home, and it wasn't an accident. He stepped into the hallway, closing the bedroom door with a soft click. The penthouse, with its glittering surfaces and endless views, felt like a stage for a tragedy he hadn't seen coming. His gaze drifted to a sleek security panel on the wall, its red light blinking steadily, a silent witness to the truth. Samuel's fingers hovered over it, hesitating. He'd installed the cameras for safety, a precaution for a billionaire's life, but now they felt like a lifeline to answers he wasn't sure he could face. Elena appeared at the end of the hall, her small frame tense, graying hair pulled tight in a bun. "Sir," she said, voice low, "I found something by the pool earlier, a scarf soaked through." "I didn't want to alarm Mrs. Caldwell." Her eyes flicked toward the bedroom, then back to Samuel, heavy with unspoken worry. "It's in the laundry now, but it wasn't an accident." Samuel nodded, his throat tight. "Thank you, Elena," he said, voice steady despite the storm inside. She lingered a moment as if wanting to say more, then turned away, her footsteps fading into the hum of the penthouse. He moved toward the control room, a small, sterile space tucked behind the main living area. The door clicked shut behind him, sealing him in with the hum of electronics and the glow of multiple screens. His fingers brushed the ruby earring in his pocket, Chloe's name echoing in his mind. He thought of her at their last family dinner, her smile tight as their parents praised Shanice's charity work, her eyes glinting with something darker than envy. "She doesn't belong," Chloe had whispered once, when she thought Samuel wasn't listening. The memory stung now, sharp and precise. He sat at the console, the chair cold against his back, and powered on the security system. The screens flickered to life, each one a window into the penthouse. Pool deck, living room, hallways. His heart pounded, a drumbeat of dread and determination. Whatever had hurt Shanice, whatever had left her broken on that floor, was hiding in these frames, and Samuel would find it, no matter how much it cost him. What darkness had crept into their sanctuary? Who had dared to touch his wife, his love, his future? The answers were close, and they would burn. The bedroom door clicked shut behind Samuel, sealing Shanice's trembling form in the golden glow of the bedside lamp. Her words, "Am I enough for you?" clung to him, sharp as glass shards in his chest. He stood frozen in the hallway, the ruby earring in his pocket burning against his palm like a guilty secret. The penthouse, with its glittering surfaces and endless city views, felt like a stage where the curtains had been ripped away, revealing a tragedy he hadn't scripted. His heart thudded, a mix of rage and helplessness, as he forced himself to move, each step toward the truth heavier than the last. Shanice's sobs echoed in his mind, her voice fragile yet piercing, unraveling the man who'd built empires with cold precision. He saw her again in his memory, crumpled on the floor, her long, sleek hair matted with water, the emerald maternity dress clinging to her like a second skin, torn and betrayed. Those bruises on her arm, faint, purple shadows, weren't from a fall. They were marks of cruelty, deliberate and cruel, and the thought made his stomach churn. He wanted to storm back, hold her, promise her the world, but promises wouldn't undo the pain etched into her eyes. He paused by the grand piano in the living room, its polished surface reflecting the city's restless lights. His fingers grazed the keys, a reflex, but no sound came. The silence was deafening, broken only by that persistent drip, drip, drip from somewhere deep in the penthouse. Each drop a taunt, a reminder of the mystery soaking through his perfect life. He glanced at the security panel on the wall, its red light blinking like a heartbeat, urging him forward. But first he needed to see her again, to anchor himself before diving into the abyss of truth. Samuel slipped back into the bedroom, moving quietly so as not to startle Shanice. She lay on the bed now, curled beneath the cashmere blanket, her breathing uneven, eyes closed but fluttering with unease. Her hair fanned across the pillow, still damp, strands catching the light like dark silk. He knelt beside her, his throat tight, watching the rise and fall of her chest, each breath a small victory against whatever had broken her. "I'm here," he whispered, though she didn't stir. Her hand rested protectively over her belly, fingers curled as if guarding their unborn child from the world's sharp edges. The sight twisted something deep inside him, love, guilt, and a growing fury that someone had dared touch her. He reached out, brushing a wet strand from her cheek, his touch feather light. Her skin was cold, too cold, and the bruise on her shoulder seemed darker now, a silent accusation he couldn't ignore. "Who did this to you?" he murmured, more to himself than to her. The lie she'd told, "I slipped," hung in the air, brittle and unconvincing. Shanice wasn't clumsy. She moved with a grace that had first drawn him to her, a quiet strength that made her the heart of his world. This wasn't an accident. It was a violation, and the ruby earring in his pocket pointed to a name he didn't want to believe. Chloe. His sister's face flashed in his mind, her sharp smile, her eyes that always held a glint of something unspoken. Chloe, who'd grown up in the shadow of their family's wealth, always craved the spotlight. He remembered her at a charity gala, standing stiffly as their parents toasted Shanice's work with inner-city youth, her beauty and warmth stealing the room. Chloe's laugh had been tight, her words clipped. "She's quite the star, isn't she?" Samuel had brushed it off then, but now those words felt like a warning, laced with venom he'd been too blind to see. A soft creak from the hallway snapped him back. Elena, the housekeeper, stood at the threshold, her small frame silhouetted against the dim light. Her hands twisted a cloth, knuckles pale, her eyes darting between Samuel and the sleeping Shanice. "Sir," she whispered, voice barely audible, "I didn't want to say earlier, but I saw Miss Chloe by the pool today. She was angry, pacing. Mrs. Caldwell was out there. And then—" She stopped, swallowing hard, her gaze dropping to the floor. Samuel's blood ran cold. "And then what, Elena?" His voice was low, a controlled storm. He stood, towering over her, though his anger wasn't for her. The ruby earring seemed to pulse in his pocket, a piece of the puzzle falling into place. "She was crying when she came back inside," Elena said, almost inaudible. "Her dress was wet, torn. I wanted to help, but she told me to stay quiet. She said it was for your sake." Elena's eyes flicked up, pleading, as if carrying the weight of Shanice's pain herself. Samuel's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists. For his sake? The word stung, a betrayal wrapped in loyalty. He nodded, dismissing Elena with a tight, "Thank you." She retreated, her footsteps fading, leaving him alone with the truth clawing at his heart. Chloe, his own sister, had been here, had seen Shanice's tears and left her broken. The thought was a knife, twisting deeper with every heartbeat. He moved to the window, the city sprawling below like a glittering lie. Shanice's pain wasn't just physical, it was in her words, her fear that she didn't belong in his world. He'd fought to make her feel safe, to prove their love was stronger than the whispers of high society. But someone, Chloe, had torn that safety apart. His fingers tightened around the earring, its sharp edges biting into his palm. He needed answers, and he needed them now. The security panel beckoned, its red light a beacon in the dimness. Samuel's resolve hardened, a cold fire igniting in his chest. He wouldn't confront Chloe yet, not until he had proof, undeniable and sharp as the truth itself. He glanced back at Shanice, her face softened in sleep but still etched with sorrow. For her, for their child, he'd unravel this darkness, no matter who it exposed. His steps were steady now, purposeful, as he headed for the control room. The penthouse's silence pressed against him, but he pushed back, driven by love and fury. Whatever secrets hid in those cameras, they would speak, and when they did, someone would answer for Shanice's tears. The control room door closed behind Samuel with a soft thud, sealing him in a cocoon of sterile silence, broken only by the faint hum of electronics. The penthouse's opulence faded here, replaced by cold steel and glowing screens, each one a window into the truth he both craved and dreaded. His heart pounded, a relentless drumbeat of fury and fear, as he clutched the ruby earring, Chloe's earring, like a talisman of betrayal. Shanice's tear-streaked face haunted him, her whispered question, "Am I enough?" cutting deeper than any wound. Her pain was his failure, a crack in the life he'd built for her, and now in this dim room, he'd face the shadow that had broken her. Samuel sank into the chair, its leather creaking under his weight. The screens flickered to life as he punched in the security code, fingers trembling not from cold, but from the weight of what he might find. The monitors split into grids: pool deck, living room, hallways, bedroom, each frame a silent witness to the penthouse's secrets. His breath caught, ragged and shallow, as he scrolled through the footage, the timestamp ticking backward. Shanice's sobs echoed in his mind, her wet hair clinging to her cheeks, the torn emerald dress a mockery of the elegance she wore so effortlessly. He needed to see who had done this, needed to know why his sister's name burned in his thoughts. The pool deck feed loaded first, the screen casting a pale glow across his face. There was Shanice, hours earlier, standing near the edge, her long, sleek hair catching the breeze, her emerald dress shimmering under the afternoon sun. She moved cautiously, one hand on her belly, her beauty radiant even in her hesitation. Samuel's chest tightened, a mix of love and anguish. She was his world, his anchor, and someone had dared to shatter her. Then a figure entered the frame. Chloe, her black sweater clinging to her frame, her posture sharp and predatory. Samuel's pulse spiked, his fingers gripping the desk as he leaned closer. Chloe's lips moved, her words silent, but her body language screaming contempt. She stepped towards Shanice, too close, her hand jabbing the air like a blade. Shanice backed away, her shoulders hunching, but Chloe pressed forward, relentless. Then it happened. Chloe's hands shot out, shoving Shanice toward the pool. Shanice stumbled, arms flailing, and fell into the shallow end with a splash, her dress catching on the rough edge, tearing. Samuel's breath stopped, his vision narrowing to the screen. Chloe stood there, arms crossed, watching as Shanice struggled to climb out, her hair now a wet curtain, her hands clutching the pool's rim. No help, no remorse, just cold, calculated disdain. Samuel's hands shook, rage boiling in his veins. He switched to the bedroom feed, his heart a fist in his chest. There they were again. Later, Shanice, dripping wet, shivering as she entered the room. Chloe followed, her voice inaudible, but her face twisted with venom. She grabbed a glass of water from the nightstand and flung it over Shanice, the liquid soaking her already ruined dress. Shanice flinched, backing against the bed, but Chloe seized her arm, yanking the fabric until it tore further, leaving a fresh bruise. Samuel's teeth ground together, the sound loud in the quiet room. He wanted to scream, to storm out and confront Chloe, but something colder took hold, a need for proof, undeniable and sharp, to ensure she couldn't twist her way out. Chloe's voice, though silent on the footage, seemed to echo in his mind. He remembered her at a family dinner, her eyes glinting as she muttered, "Shanice doesn't fit here." He dismissed it as jealousy, a fleeting sibling rivalry, but now it was a blade cutting through his trust. Chloe, who'd always craved their parents' approval, who'd basked in the Caldwell name's glow, had she hated Shanice enough to hurt her? The footage screamed yes, but Samuel needed more. He needed her to confess, to bare her soul before he tore her mask apart. Elena's voice broke his trance, soft but urgent from the doorway. "Sir, I found this." She held out a crumpled note, her hands trembling slightly, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and loyalty. Samuel took it, unfolding the paper to reveal Chloe's tight scrawl. "She'll never be one of us. I'll make sure of it." His blood ran cold, the words a confirmation of the darkness he'd seen. "Where was this?" he asked, voice low, barely containing the storm inside. "Near the pool, tucked in Miss Chloe's coat pocket," Elena said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I didn't want to believe it, but Mrs. Caldwell's been different since Miss Chloe's visits." She paused and then added, I kept quiet for too long. I'm sorry. Samuel nodded, his jaw tight. You did the right thing, Elena. His voice was steady, but inside he was unraveling. Chloe, his sister, had crossed a line he couldn't forgive. The note burned in his hand, a piece of the puzzle, but not enough. He needed her voice, her admission, captured for all to hear. His mind raced, plotting. He'd draw her out, let her think she was safe, then let the cameras catch her in the act. He turned back to the screens, his resolve hardening like steel. Shanice's pain, her fear, her doubt, they were his to protect, to avenge. He wouldn't let Chloe's jealousy destroy their family. The penthouse, with its glittering facade, held a poison, and Samuel would root it out, frame by frame, until the truth was laid bare. The control room's sterile glow pressed against Samuel's skin, the screen's light casting shadows that mirrored the storm in his chest. The footage of Chloe shoving Shanice into the pool, dousing her with water, and tearing her dress replayed in his mind, each frame a fresh wound. His fingers gripped the crumpled note from Chloe. She'll never be one of us. I'll make sure of it. Its words searing like acid. Samuel's rage was a living thing, clawing at his ribs, but beneath it lay a deeper ache. Guilt. He'd brought Shanice into this glittering world, promised her safety, and yet here she was, broken by his own sister's hands, her voice fragile and trembling. Am I enough? Haunted him, a plea he hadn't answered with action. Not yet, but he would. He leaned back in the leather chair, its creak a stark contrast to the silence of the penthouse. The ruby earring, the note, the footage, they were pieces of a puzzle, but incomplete. Chloe's cruelty was clear, but Samuel needed her to confess, to speak her venom aloud where the cameras could catch it. His heart thudded, not with fear, but with a cold, calculated resolve. He'd built empires by outsmarting rivals. Now he'd outsmart his sister to protect the woman he loved. Shanice's tear-streaked face, her long, sleek hair matted with pool water, her bruised arm, they fueled him, turning his fury into a blade, sharp and precise. Samuel's eyes flicked to the bedroom feed, where Shanice slept fitfully, her hands still curled protectively over her belly. The sight was a knife to his soul, her vulnerability, her strength, the life they were building together, all threatened by Chloe's jealousy. He remembered a moment from months ago, a charity gala where Shanice had shone, her warmth drawing every eye. Chloe had stood at the edge of the crowd, her smile tight, her fingers twisting the stem of a wine glass as their parents praised Shanice. She's remarkable, their mother had said, oblivious to Chloe's darkening gaze. Samuel had seen it but dismissed it as petty sibling rivalry. Now that gaze was a warning he'd ignored, and Shanice had paid the price. He stood, pacing the small room, the hum of the screens a faint pulse in the background. His mind churned, plotting. Confronting Chloe now would be a mistake. She'd twist the truth, play the victim, her tears as calculated as her cruelty. No, he needed her to act again, to expose herself without knowing she was being watched. The cameras, with their unblinking eyes, were his allies. He'd lure her back, let her think she'd won, then let her own words damn her. Elena's soft knock broke his thoughts. She stood in the doorway, her small frame tense, her graying hair catching the dim light. "Sir," she whispered, clutching a folded cloth, "I found something else." She extended her hand, revealing a slim, silver phone. Chloe's, its screen cracked, left behind in the rush of her departure. "It was by the pool near where it happened." Her voice faltered, eyes flicking downward, heavy with guilt for staying silent too long. Samuel took the phone, its weight cold and heavy. "You've done more than enough, Elena," he said, his voice steady but warm, acknowledging her courage. She nodded, retreating, but her presence lingered, a reminder of loyalty in a house of betrayal. He powered on the phone, the screen flickering to life. A text draft, unsent, glowed in the darkness. "Shanice doesn't belong. I'll make her leave, whatever it takes." His stomach twisted, the words a mirror to the note, confirming Chloe's obsession. She wasn't just jealous, she was consumed, her identity tied to the Caldwell name, now threatened by Shanice's light. He slipped the phone into his pocket, next to the earring and note. Each piece was a weapon, but not enough. He needed Chloe here, in the penthouse, her guard down, her venom spilling freely. His mind raced, crafting a plan as meticulous as any business deal. He'd leave the phone in plain sight, let Chloe see it, let her think Shanice had found it and was closing in on her secret. The cameras would do the rest, capturing every word, every move. Samuel stepped to the console, adjusting the settings to ensure audio on every feed. Living room, pool deck, Bangkok. His fingers moved with the precision of a surgeon, but his heart was a furnace, burning for Shanice. He saw her again in his mind, crumpled on the floor, her dress torn, her voice breaking. The guilt was suffocating. He should have seen Chloe's resentment sooner, should have protected Shanice from the start. But guilt wouldn't save her now. Action would. He moved to the living room, placing Chloe's phone on the glass coffee table, its cracked screen glinting under the chandelier. It was a bait, a silent challenge. He'd call Chloe, tell her he was leaving for an urgent meeting, and wait. She'd come, drawn by the phone, by her need to control. And when she did, the cameras would see everything. Samuel glanced toward the bedroom, where Shanice slept, unaware of the battle he was waging. His love for her was a fire, unyielding, but so was his rage. Chloe had crossed a line, and he'd make sure she faced the consequences. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over Chloe's name. His breath steadied, his resolve a steel cage around his heart. He'd protect Shanice, their child, their future, no matter the cost. The penthouse's silence pressed in, but Samuel stood tall, a man ready to fight for the woman who was his home. The trap was set, and the truth was waiting. Samuel stood in the living room, the cracked screen of Chloe's phone glinting on the glass coffee table like a taunt. The penthouse's silence was a weight, pressing against his shoulders, but his heart burned with a fierce clarity. Shanice's pain, her tear-soaked eyes, her trembling voice asking, "Am I enough?" was a fire in his chest, fueling every move. The ruby earring, the crumpled note, the damning footage of Chloe's cruelty. They were weapons, but not enough. He needed her voice, her confession, captured in the unblinking gaze of the cameras. His fingers tightened around his phone, thumb poised over Chloe's name, as he steeled himself for the act he was about to play. Love for Shanice and rage at his sister churned within him, a storm held in check by a single truth. He would protect his wife, no matter what it took. He glanced toward the bedroom, where Shanice slept, her fragile form a shadow in his mind. The image of her crumpled on the floor, her long, sleek hair matted with pool water, her emerald dress torn, haunted him. Guilt gnawed at his edges. He'd brought her into this world of wealth and scrutiny, promised her safety, only to let his own sister's venom seep through the cracks. But guilt wouldn't undo her bruises or silence her doubts. Action would. Samuel's jaw clenched, his resolve a blade honed sharp. Chloe thought she could hide behind her polished smiles, but he'd draw her out, let her own darkness betray her. He tapped Chloe's name, his voice steady as he left a voicemail. "Hey, I'm heading out for an urgent board meeting. Won't be back till late. Shanice is resting. Check on her if you're nearby." The lie was smooth, calculated, and designed to lure Chloe back to the penthouse. He ended the call, then moved to the foyer, deliberately jangling his keys, letting them clatter against the marble floor. The sound echoed, a signal to anyone listening that he was gone, but he wasn't. He slipped into a small utility closet near the service entrance, its shelves lined with linens and cleaning supplies, the air thick with the scent of lavender and bleach. He propped his laptop on a narrow shelf, the screen glowing with live camera feeds. Living room, pool deck, Bangkok, each frame a stage for the truth to unfold. Samuel's heart pounded, a mix of dread and anticipation. He pictured Shanice's face, her eyes red with tears, her hands shielding their unborn child. The thought was a knife, twisting deeper with every beat. He'd failed to see Chloe's jealousy, her need to be the Caldwell family's shining star. He remembered a moment years ago, Chloe beaming as their father praised her at a gala, only to sulk when Shanice's arrival shifted the spotlight. "She's not one of us," Chloe had hissed once, her voice low but sharp. Samuel had laughed it off, blind to the poison festering in her heart. Now that poison had spilled onto Shanice, and he'd never forgive himself, or Chloe, for it. The laptop screen flickered, pulling him back. The living room feed showed the coffee table, Chloe's phone a silent bait under the chandelier's glow. Samuel's breath slowed, his focus narrowing to the task. He adjusted the audio settings, ensuring every word would be captured. His fingers brushed the ruby earring in his pocket, its sharp edges a reminder of the betrayal he was about to expose. He felt like a hunter, patient and precise, but the prey was his sister, and the weight of that truth was a stone in his gut. Love for Shanice anchored him, but the thought of confronting Chloe's family, blood, tore at him. Still, he'd choose Shanice every time, without hesitation. Elena's soft footsteps approached the closet door. She knocked, barely audible, and whispered, "Sir, I left the phone where you asked. I saw Miss Chloe's car pull up downstairs." Her voice trembled, laced with loyalty and fear. Samuel opened the door a crack, meeting her wide, worried eyes. "You're doing the right thing, Elena," he said, his tone firm but kind. "Stay out of sight. This ends today." She nodded, clutching her apron, and retreated, her presence a quiet strength. Samuel's chest tightened with gratitude. She'd seen Shanice's pain, carried it in her silence, and now stood with him. He turned back to the screen, his pulse a steady drum. The living room feed shifted. A shadow moved across the frame. Chloe. Her heels clicked softly, a predator's tread, as she entered, her black coat swinging like a cloak. She froze, spotting her phone on the table, her posture stiffening. Samuel's breath caught, his heart a fist of hope and fury. She was here, drawn by the bait, just as he'd planned. Chloe's fingers hovered over the phone, her face a mask of calculation. Samuel leaned closer to the screen, his emotions a tangled knot. Anger at her betrayal, sorrow for the sister he thought he knew, and an unyielding need to protect Shanice. He saw Shanice again in his mind, her bruised arm, her voice breaking with doubt. That image drove him, stealing his resolve. Chloe might think she could control this stage, but Samuel held the script now. The cameras were rolling, their lenses cold and unforgiving, ready to capture her fall. He waited, every muscle taut, his love for Shanice a beacon in the darkness. Chloe's next move would seal her fate, and Samuel was ready to watch it unfold. The utility closet's dimness pressed around Samuel, the air heavy with the scent of lavender and bleach. But his eyes were locked on the laptop screen, where Chloe's shadow loomed in the living room feed. Her presence was a blade in his heart, slicing through memories of their childhood. Shared secrets, late-night laughter, now tainted by her cruelty to Shanice. His chest ached with betrayal, but love for his wife burned brighter, a fierce flame that drowned out the pain. Shanice's tear-streaked face, her long, sleek hair matted with pool water, her voice trembling. "Am I enough?" drove every beat of his pulse. The cracked phone on the coffee table, glinting under the chandelier, was his bait, and Chloe had taken it, stepping into the trap he'd set with cold precision. His breath was steady, but his heart roared, a mix of dread and determination to end this nightmare. The screen showed Chloe snatching her phone, her fingers trembling as she checked the screen, her face tightening with suspicion. Samuel's jaw clenched, his emotions a storm, rage at her audacity, sorrow for the sister he'd lost, and an unyielding need to protect Shanice. He leaned closer, the laptop's glow casting harsh lines across his face. The audio feed crackled to life, capturing Chloe's sharp intake of breath as she muttered, "She found it. She knows." Her voice was a hiss, laced with paranoia, and Samuel's blood ran hot. She thought Shanice was on to her, but it was he who held the truth, and he'd make her say it aloud. Footsteps echoed through the penthouse, soft but deliberate, as Shanice appeared on the screen, entering the living room. Her hair, now dry but still loose, flowed down her back, and her fresh dress, a soft ivory that hugged her pregnant belly, swayed with her cautious steps. Samuel's heart lurched, a surge of protectiveness flooding him. She shouldn't be there. Not now. Not with Chloe so close. But her eyes, still red from tears, held a quiet strength, as if she sensed the storm about to break. "Chloe," she called, voice steady but edged with fear. "I heard you come in." Chloe spun, her posture rigid, the phone clutched like a weapon. "What are you doing here?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Samuel's fingers dug into his palms, his breath shallow. He wanted to rush out, shield Shanice, but he forced himself to stay still, the cameras his silent allies. Chloe stepped closer, her eyes blazing with a mix of fear and fury. "You think you can take everything from me?" she spat. "The family, the name, Samuel's love? You're nothing but a pretty face who got lucky." Shanice's shoulders tensed, but she held her ground, one hand resting on her belly. "I never wanted to take anything," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I just love him." The words hit Samuel like a blow, her love a beacon that made his chest ache with pride and guilt. She was fighting despite her pain, and he'd failed to protect her from this moment. Chloe's laugh was cold, brittle. "Love? You think love makes you a Caldwell? I've spent my life keeping this family's name untarnished, and you waltz in, stealing the spotlight." Her voice cracked, revealing the raw wound beneath her venom. "At every gala, every dinner, it's you they see, your face, your charity, your baby." She gestured toward Shanice's belly, her hand shaking. "That child will take everything I've fought for, and I won't let it happen." Samuel's heart pounded, his rage a wildfire. Chloe's jealousy wasn't just about attention. It was about legacy, about her fear of being erased by Shanice's light. He saw it now, the depth of her obsession, and it sickened him. His sister, once his confidant, had become a stranger, consumed by a need to control. But Shanice's strength, standing tall despite her fear, filled him with a fierce resolve. He wouldn't let her face this alone. Chloe stepped closer, her hand rising as if to strike, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You don't belong here, Shanice. You never will." The words were a dagger, aimed at Shanice's heart, but she didn't flinch, her eyes locking onto Chloe's with a defiance that made Samuel's chest swell. The camera's red light blinked above, capturing every word, every move, and Samuel knew it was time. He burst from the closet, the door slamming against the wall as he stormed into the living room. "Enough!" His voice was thunder, shaking the air. Chloe froze, her hands suspended, her face draining of color. Shanice gasped, stumbling back, her eyes wide with relief and fear. Samuel crossed the room in 3 strides, placing himself between his wife and his sister, his body a shield. "You're done, Chloe," he said, his voice low, lethal. "Every word, every move, it's all recorded." He pointed to the camera, its lens a silent judge. Chloe's eyes darted to the ceiling, her breath hitching. "Samuel, you don't understand," she stammered, her voice cracking. "I was protecting us, our family, our name." But her words faltered, her mask slipping to reveal the desperation beneath. Samuel's heart twisted, not with pity, but with the pain of losing the sister he thought he knew. "You hurt her," he said, his voice breaking. "You hurt my wife, my family. There's no protecting that." Shanice's hand found his, her touch grounding him, her warmth a reminder of why he was here. He turned to her, seeing the tears in her eyes but also a flicker of hope. Chloe's shoulders slumped, her defiance crumbling under the weight of her own words, caught forever on tape. Samuel's love for Shanice was a fortress, unyielding, and no jealousy could tear it down. The living room air crackled with the aftermath of Samuel's roar, his "enough" still echoing in the chandelier's prisms. Chloe stood frozen, her hand limp where it had hovered, poised to strike Shanice. Her face, once sharp with defiance, crumbled into a mask of shock, her eyes darting to the camera's red light, blinking above like an unyielding judge. Samuel's chest heaved, his love for Shanice a blazing shield, but his heart ached with the sting of betrayal. His sister, his confidant through years of triumphs and losses, had become a stranger, her jealousy a poison that had bruised Shanice's skin and soul. Shanice's touch, her fingers entwined with his, anchored him, her warmth a lifeline against the storm of Chloe's cruelty. Her long, sleek hair brushed his arm, a reminder of her strength, her quiet defiance in the face of venom. "You hurt her," Samuel repeated, his voice low, raw with pain and fury. "You hurt my wife, my family." Each word was a hammer, striking at the bond he'd once shared with Chloe. Her eyes widened, lips parting as if to protest, but the weight of the camera's gaze silenced her. Shanice's breath hitched behind him, her hand tightening in his, and Samuel felt her fear, her relief, her trust, all pouring into that single touch. He turned to her, meeting her eyes, still glistening with unshed tears, but holding a flicker of hope. "You're safe now," he whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of his promise. "I swear it." Chloe's voice broke through, trembling, desperate. "Samuel, you don't get it," she pleaded, her hands gesturing wildly. "I was protecting our name, our legacy. Her finger jabbed toward Shanice, who flinched but stood tall. "She doesn't belong in our world. She's taking everything. Your love, their praise, the future of this family." Her voice rose, shrill with panic, but it only deepened Samuel's disgust. He saw now the depth of her obsession, her fear of being eclipsed by Shanice's light. The gala flashed in his mind, Chloe's forced smile as their parents lauded Shanice, her silence a brewing storm he'd been too blind to see. His guilt surged, a bitter taste. He should have protected Shanice sooner, should have seen Chloe's darkness before it left bruises. Shanice's voice, soft but steady, cut through the tension. "I never wanted your place, Chloe," she said, her hand still clutching Samuel's, her eyes unwavering. "I just wanted a home with him." The words pierced Samuel, her love a beacon that made his heart swell with pride and ache with remorse. She'd faced Chloe's cruelty alone, her strength a quiet fire, and he'd let her down. But not anymore. A soft knock interrupted, and Elena slipped into the room, her small frame tense, her gray eyes sharp with resolve. "Sir," she said, voice steady despite her trembling hands, "I found this in Miss Chloe's coat." She held out a slim notebook, its leather cover worn, pages filled with Chloe's tight scrawl. Samuel took it, his fingers brushing the rough edges, and flipped it open. Lines leaped out. "Shanice will ruin us. She's not a Caldwell. I have to stop her." His stomach churned, the words a mirror to Chloe's venom, a confession written in her own hand. Elena's gaze met his, a silent apology for her earlier silence, but also a spark of courage. "I couldn't stay quiet anymore," she whispered. Samuel nodded, gratitude mixing with his rage. "You did right, Elena." He turned to Chloe, holding up the notebook. "This ends now." His voice was steel, cutting through her faltering protests. He pressed a button on his phone, summoning the building's security. The wait was agonizing, each second heavy with Shanice's quiet breaths, Chloe's shallow gasps, and the hum of the city beyond the glass walls. Samuel kept Shanice close, his arm around her, feeling her heartbeat against his side. Her presence grounded him, her love a fortress against the betrayal before him. Footsteps echoed in the foyer, and two security guards entered, their faces stern. "Mr. Caldwell?" one asked, eyeing Chloe, who shrank back, her bravado dissolving. Samuel handed them his phone, the footage queued up. Chloe's shoved by the pool, her venom in the bedroom, her threats moments ago. "Take her," he said, his voice steady but heavy with sorrow. The guards moved, their hands firm but calm, guiding Chloe toward the door. "Samuel, please," she cried, her voice breaking, but he turned away, his focus on Shanice. Her tears had stopped, but her eyes held a fragility that tore at him. As Chloe's heels clicked down the hall, her protest fading, Elena stepped closer, her voice soft. "Mrs. Caldwell, I'm so sorry I didn't speak sooner." Shanice managed a small smile, her hand reaching for Elena's. "You spoke now," she said, voice thick with emotion. "That's enough." Samuel's heart swelled, pride for his wife mingling with relief. Elena's loyalty, Shanice's resilience. They were the light breaking through this darkness. The guards returned, confirming the police were on their way. Samuel didn't care about the headlines or the whispers that would follow. All that mattered was Shanice, safe in his arms, her hair brushing his cheek, her breath steadying. He'd failed her once, but never again. Chloe's notebook lay on the table, a testament to her unraveling. But Samuel's focus was on the woman beside him, the future they'd build together. Her love was his strength, and he'd guard it with everything he had. The living room, once a battlefield of Chloe's venom, now hummed with a fragile calm, the chandelier's light softening the edges of the penthouse's grandeur. Samuel held Shanice close, her warmth seeping into him, a balm against the raw ache of betrayal. Her long, sleek hair brushed his arm, its familiar jasmine scent grounding him as her breath steadied against his chest. The echo of Chloe's desperate cries and the guard's retreating footsteps lingered, but Samuel's world narrowed to his wife, her resilience a beacon through the storm. Her whispered doubt, "Am I enough?" still clawed at his heart, but so did her strength, the way she'd faced Chloe's cruelty with quiet defiance. His love for her was a fortress, unyielding, and now with Chloe gone, he felt the weight of their future, fragile but full of promise. Shanice's fingers tightened in his, her eyes still glistening, meeting his with a flicker of hope. "You stopped her," she murmured, her voice soft but steady, a thread of trust weaving through her pain. Samuel's throat tightened, guilt and pride warring within him. He'd protected her, but Tit was late to spare her the bruises, the tears. "I should have seen it sooner," he said, his voice rough, cracking under the weight of his failure. "I brought you into this world, promised you safety, and I let you down." His hand brushed her cheek, her skin warm now, no longer icy with fear. She leaned into his touch, a small gesture that felt like absolution. "You're here now," she whispered, her lips curving into a faint smile, the first he'd seen since he'd found her crumpled on the floor. That smile was a spark, igniting something fierce in Samuel. Hope, love, a vow to rebuild what Chloe had tried to shatter. He pressed his forehead to hers, their breaths mingling, and for a moment, the penthouse's silence was no longer oppressive but sacred, a space for healing. Eleanor's soft footsteps broke the quiet, her small frame appearing at the edge of the room. She carried a wooden box, its surface polished to a warm glow, and her gray eyes held a tenderness that hadn't been there before. "Mrs. Caldwell," she said, voice steady but thick with emotion, "I made this for the little one." She opened the box, revealing a pair of tiny knit booties, pale blue and impossibly soft, nestled in velvet. "For when they arrive," she added, her smile tentative but warm. Shanice's eyes widened, fresh tears spilling, not from pain but from gratitude. "Elena, they're beautiful," she said, reaching out to squeeze the housekeeper's hand. "Thank you for everything." Samuel watched, his heart swelling. Elena's loyalty, her quiet courage in bringing him Chloe's notebook, had tipped the scales toward justice. But this gesture, this small gift, was more. It was a bridge to a future untainted by Chloe's shadow. "You've been our rock," Samuel said, his voice low, sincere. Elena ducked her head, cheeks flushing, but her eyes shone with pride. "I just want this house to be a home again," she murmured, stepping back to give them space. Shanice set the booties on the coffee table, next to Chloe's abandoned notebook, its pages a stark reminder of the darkness they'd overcome. Samuel's gaze lingered on it, the words he'd glimpsed. "Shanice will ruin us." A bitter echo of Chloe's jealousy. He felt a pang, not for his sister's fate, but for the bond they'd lost, twisted by her need to outshine Shanice. He'd grown up shielding Chloe, cheering her on, but her envy had turned her into a stranger. Yet, as he looked at Shanice, her hand resting on her belly, her smile growing, he knew he'd chosen right. She was his family, his home, and no legacy was worth more than that. He guided her to the couch, the city's lights twinkling beyond the glass walls, a reminder of the world they'd navigate together. "You're enough," he said, his voice firm, echoing her earlier plea. "More than enough. You're my everything." Shanice's eyes softened, her fingers tracing his jaw, a touch that spoke of forgiveness, of love unbroken. "I was so scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just of her, but of losing us, of not fitting in your world." The confession cut Samuel deep, her vulnerability a mirror to his own fears, of failing her, of letting wealth and family tear them apart. "You fit," he said fiercely, cupping her face. "This world, this home, it's ours because of you." His words were a vow, each one sealing a crack in her doubts. Shanice nodded, tears falling, but her smile steady, a testament to her strength. The baby kicked beneath her hand, a flutter they both felt, and Samuel laughed, a sound raw with relief. "See? Even they agree," he said, his voice lightening for the first time, drawing a soft chuckle from her. The penthouse felt different now, its silence no longer heavy but hopeful, a canvas for their future. The booties, the city lights, Shanice's smile, they were fragments of a new beginning. Chloe's shadow would fade, her notebook a relic of a battle won. Samuel held Shanice closer, feeling the rhythm of her breath, the promise of their child. This was his wealth, not in billions or status, but in her, in them. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent to their victory, but inside, love had triumphed. Samuel kissed Shanice's forehead, his heart full, ready to face whatever came next, as long as she was by his side. What a journey Samuel and Shanice have taken us on. Love triumphing over betrayal, strength rising from pain. Their story reminds us that family is built on trust, not envy. What did you feel as Chloe's truth unraveled? Did Shanice's resilience or Samuel's resolve move you? Share your thoughts below. Your voice matters. Thank you for joining us in this tale of heartbreak and hope. Hit subscribe to never miss a story that stirs the soul, and we'll see you in the next one, where more truths await to be uncovered. Until then, keep believing in love's power.